What's going on, guys? This is Mike with the 1% Mindset Podcast. I know it's been a super long time since I've actually had a guest on the podcast, but decided to make an exception for this phenomenal human being. Shanique, how's it going? How are you?
I'm good, and I'm super excited to be sitting down with you. We're basically turning our conversations into a podcast.
Yeah, I mean, excellent. That's exactly what we're doing for real, for real. So, uh, man, I'm really excited for a lot of stuff that you've done, like what you're doing. But I have the privilege of knowing you. So, for the audience who listen in every week, kind of just go through a little bit of your journey, not until current, but I get we met initially while you were at NYU.
Yes.
So kind of take me through that NYU journey up until you started working at, the multiple agencies you've worked at.
Yeah. So to your point, we met like almost 10 years ago, which is wild.
Wow,
But when
crazy.
we met, I want to say I was a senior and I was getting ready to kind of transition out into like the quote unquote real world. And really, I went just to backtrack. I went to business school at NYU, and really, it's kind of set up for you to do the thing, get an internship, and that internship turned into a job. And for me, that path was a little bit different. Because I wasn't a finance major, I was a marketing major. There wasn't a defined path for me. And I had worked at the large banks, did the internship, did the whole thing, and kind of at the end of it was like, well, this is not really a fit for me culturally. It's not a fit for my personality. It's not even really what I want to do. The money's good, but like ultimately, I think I want to be doing something different. So I took kind of the weird path of not having a job when I graduated college. When I want to say, if you leave Stern without a job, you are probably like in the 10%. 90% of people are like booked, signed on the dotted line when they enter senior year. So for me, I kind of left with no real plan, which will be kind of which will be the piece that comes up over and over again in my path, right? It's like, I don't know what this looks like, but what the defined path wasn't for me. So I wound up working at a startup for about a year and a half, almost 2 years, and really kind of that's where I learned to work. It was super lean, so there was not a lot of handholding. You kind of had to figure it out on your own, and that's where I kind of got the confidence to be able to be like, look, I know I can do this because I was basically running things at the start. Not I won't say running things, but for what I was tasked to do, there wasn't much handholding. It's like either you get it or you don't.
That was the education company.
Yeah, when I worked at an education company, it was ed tech. My role was kind of like a coordinator slash marketing person slash whatever you wanted to be because it was a startup, right? It's like everyone wore several hats. So I was there for a year and a half, some change. And just as a testament to being at NYU and having internships and making those connections, I had an opportunity kind of come on my plate for me to go work for a woman that I interned with when I was in college, and jumped at the opportunity. For me, she was someone who really built something from scratch. Wasn't really interested in PR, but I was like, I believe in her, so I'm gonna go do it. So as fate would have it, I started on Monday, and by Friday, it was like, yeah, this is probably not going to work out. And I was back again on the job circuit. Literally 5 days in, it was like, this doesn't feel right for me, and it's better that I make a jump now than to sit in this job for 6 months, for a year, and waste time. So again, agency was still on my radar. It's still ultimately what I wanted to do, but it was just a little harder to break into it because I did not have an agency background. Despite all the other stacked resume, it didn't matter. You never worked at an agency. We're not trying to talk to you. So thankfully, this woman let me work for her until I found a new job. So I was basically just hitting the ground running, interviewing like crazy, and came across a job listing at my first agency, and they were specifically looking for someone with direct mail experience, which if you are 24, you typically don't have because only older people do direct mail because everything had moved to digital. And just so happened at the ed tech startup, direct mail was a large part of what we were doing. So that happened to be kind of just my way into my first agency. And that's how I got my foot in the door. But really, up until that point, it was knocking on doors, just wanting someone to let me in, essentially. And it didn't matter. It didn't matter about the degree. It didn't matter where I went to school. It didn't matter about what I've done. I just needed someone to give me that opportunity. And once I had the opportunity, I kind of just continued to push on that path forward until I got to a place where I decided to kind of do it on my own.
Mm. So I want to backtrack a little. So you
Yes.
said, you were one of, the very few who left Stern and did not have a job. What
Yes.
was there pressure, outside pressure, whether it was from peers, parents, um, considering NYU obviously being Ivy League, being as expensive as it is, like just not going the traditional path that, the rest of your colleagues went?
Was there pressure? Yeah. I mean, my parents weren't particularly pressuring me because, to keep it 100, like my parents are really people who came from poverty and like pulled themselves by the bootstraps. They're not college educated. I'm a first generation. So for them, they're like, look, like you just even graduating, it's like we got you to the point where you got into college and you graduated. Like all this, like you need a job before you graduate sounds dumb to us. They were really kind of not understanding the internal pressure of being in a space where everyone is high achieving. Quite frankly, everyone is high achieving. So I would say a lot of the pressure just came from having everyone around you being in a place where they're like, well, I'm going here, I'm going to this large firm, I'm making 80,000, right? Like I got a $20,000 signing bonus. Like these are the levels of things that are like going, or conversations that are going on. And meanwhile, I'm like, don't know what I'm doing after graduation. And um, that's just that, right? Like, but I think for me, I've never kind of followed the traditional path. Like, yes, I went to college. Yes, I did the whole thing. But like for me, I don't think anyone would have betted on me to even make it that far. So kind of was like open territory for me to say, you know what, I've never followed a traditional path anyway. So like, why kind of jump into it now?
So what was it like going, being at NYU, obviously being a minority there for the most part. Well, not for the most part,
Sure.
being the minority there at NYU, because I'm pretty sure the black population at NYU isn't huge. Um, being at an Ivy League, being a woman, like as far as your day to day while you were in school, what did that feel like for you?
Yeah, so great questions. Well, and also let me correct you. And this comes up all the time. NYU is not an Ivy League. I won't take that credit for
Oh,
myself. It
really?
comes up all the time.
I,
Um,
why? That's interesting. I really thought, I know, like Columbia. I really thought NYU was one of them.
I
Maybe
think
because Mary Kate and Ashley went there.
I think it just has kind of this vibe of just being like a celeb-esque school, so people just think it's Ivy. It's
That's
not. I would love to say that I'm an Ivy League graduate, but I'm not. So I won't lie to
well,
people.
it does. NYU does hold a lot of prestige, so I will say that.
Right, but yeah, I'm not an
And
Ivy
I,
League graduate, guys.
okay,
Sorry.
cool. See, you do so many amazing things. I try to continue to add to your
Add
resume.
to my, you can tell people that though off the record.
But yeah, go ahead.
I mean, it was hard. I think I also went to a high school that was hella black. Like when I say hella black, like it was 95% black. We had a play every Black History Month about like finding your like ancestry and like some kid going back in time and like learning about his history, like that level of blackness. So I knew that going to NYU would be a culture shock. Like I was prepared for that. I was prepared. I thought I was prepared for it. Jumping into it, you realize that, oh, this is actually not only is it a racial difference, it's a class difference, right? Like there are a lot of very wealthy people who go to NYU whose high schools cost more than NYU's tuition. So for me, all of those things were barriers that I didn't realize I would have to overcome. And I think thankfully for me, you kind of find your tribe really early, and typically that tribe is other Black people. So a lot of the people that I met day one at NYU are still my best friends to this day, right? And like without them, honestly, I probably wouldn't have made it even through college, because you need those people to kind of hold your hand and like encourage you and understand you and know what you're going through. And not everyone can relate to that if you're not a Black person or you're not a person of color. So yeah, I mean, it was an experience, but I like in hindsight, I'm like, should I have done like an HBCU route? Like I could have done that, right? But for me, that just wasn't how it worked out. But I think any person of color who enters a predominantly white institution will have struggles that other people do not. And we can sit here all day and talk about like, well, you made it in, you could pay for it. That's the base level of getting into college. It's navigating those politics. It's learning how to integrate those things are definitely hurdles as well.
Okay. So you had you adjusted, you had those, struggles, those trials and tribulations throughout college. So now let's kind of dive into the career. Now, you spoke a little bit about the education firm, the startup that you were there for a year and a half. You interned a little bit for someone you met, and you realized, from day one it wasn't going to work, the PR firm. And then you said you finally got into an agency doing direct mail, and
Yeah.
through there you kind of circulated and kind of rose the ranks within the agency world. So kind of take me along that process, because truth be told, at least for me, and you've known me for a while, I remember when I first got to New York, one of the things that I wanted to do was work for an agency. And I was going to all the networking events, the mixers after work. I was meeting different, presidents, and, just different people at different agencies. And I couldn't quite break in. And at the time, I think I was telling you, at least this was back in, at least 8 years ago, 7, 8 years ago, or something, maybe even before, probably 9 years ago. But at that time, like, there were very few Black people that worked at agencies, right? That was just the reality of it. So you finally break in, as a woman, being Black, being African American. Kind of talk about, some of those politics that you face, to not only from an entry level position to kind of going through the ranks of, where you ultimately ended up before you decided, to take on the next journey. What was that like?
Yeah. So, I mean, getting in is the hardest part. And I think that for advertising specifically, there are some barriers that people don't know, and majority of it is like, did you intern here, right? Like, if you intern at an agency, you can usually use that as kind of your way to finagle into the agency. The problem is that, especially for people of color, right? If you are have opportunity to like intern, like for me, I had an opportunity to intern at an agency when I was in college. I turned it down because I was also interning at Deloitte, and I got paid substantially more. I was like, I can get paid $25 an hour to intern at Deloitte. I can get paid $10 an hour to intern at this agency, right? And when you don't have mom and to be clear, like my parents would have supported me either way financially, but like if you are not a person who has that privilege, you're going to take the $25, right? Like, because
Absolutely.
this is $25 like in like 2010, not
Yeah.
even like not even like right now, right? So this is like good money to a 20-year-old. So I think a lot of times what happens is that that funnel isn't filled with people of color because it's like I got bills to pay, or I don't have parents who can support me financially while I like basically almost work for free, like $10 an hour, living in New York City. If you're not from here, you got to find housing, you got to pay for food, you got to like, there's entertainment. You can't afford to do that. So a lot of times that funnel is not filled with people of color just simply because they can't afford it. And for me, it was less of an affordability issue. It was more just like, I just want to make $25 an hour, right? Like that was good money.
Yeah.
Like,
That's
that
real.
was good money. I was like, this is like money for me to live well during the summer. I could live at home. So I was free. Like, and also I was like, this is going out money when I go back to school, right? That was in my mind. I was like, look, forget the $10. Like, I'll figure out another way. But really, I think that is kind of that is the main barrier, right? You're not able to get to internships because, and there's also not a person of color who is like advocating for interns. So all those things kind of roll into lack of diversity. And there are programs that help, like MAPE, which I actually did, that help get the students of color into internships. Are really like that is the main barrier. There's a lot of nepotism. There's a lot of, well, my dad's friend works here and he got me the internship, or the CEO went to my college, so they recruit heavily at my college. Like there's a lot of that. And if you're just not in that cycle, it makes it really hard to get in. So for me, like my end just happened to be direct mail, right? Like I think there are moments in my life that I call God moments, right? Like me working in direct mail was a complete fluke. Like working at EdTech startup that had a direct mail component that happened to be part of my job was just happened to be a thing. And then I happened to apply for a job where they were looking for someone who had direct mail experience. So for me, it was kind of a fluke, but it worked out. But entering the agency space, I was 24 in an entry level position where everyone else was like fresh out of college. So again, it's like I'm coming here with more experience, and my thing was like, look, I need a year and a half, and then I need a promotion, right? Like because I'm already older than everyone here, and I need to move up quickly. So literally, I would meet with my boss and be like, what do I need to do to get promoted, right? Like I know this is my job right now, but like, what do I need to do to get promoted? Like constantly just being like, how can I be better? it to a point where it was just like, girl, like this is how it works. Like you may or may not get promoted. Like there are a lot of politics even amongst the promotions. Like it's like, hey, like we're off cycle right now. So like even though you've been here, we're not promoting anyone right now. So there was a lot of just like having conversations. How can I get promoted? How can I get promoted with anyone who would listen, right? Like these are the metrics that I should be following to get promoted. And that was a thing. Like my first agency, I got promoted, but like I had to push for it. And it wasn't because anyone thought I wasn't qualified. It was literally just like arbitrary, right? Like you stay here long enough, you'll get promoted. Like that was kind of the vibe.
So,
Yeah.
so not to cut you off. So do you think that like you were very persistent and you knew like, hey, I want to get promoted. What is it that what do I have to do? Was that like key? You said that was one of the keys to your promotion. So do you think that, for someone who's in that space, who's in that agency, because it can also be looked at as like kissing ass, right? Like
Right.
that's what it can be looked at. But again, you did what you had to do. So do you think that was absolutely necessary, at least within that space and that job or that position, in order to get that next
I
promotion?
don't I don't know if it's necessary. For my timeline, it was necessary, right? For
Got
me.
it.
Like everything that I will say here, and I will caveat this is my experience.
Absolutely.
There are people who I started with who are in the same position that I was when I left, right? Because they just said, right? It was like, I'm just sit here, I'm gonna show up every day, and eventually I'll get promoted. I do not operate in that way. It was like, no, I should have not been in this position to start with. Like I came in as an entry level with already experience under my belt. I want what's next, right? Like, and I think it's important to understand, like, be realistic with where you sit. Like, if you are 22, you're not going to be an account director, right? Like, you need to understand. But at 24, I was like, okay, I should actually be like, what was the senior account executive at my job at that time? So for me, it was like, okay, I'm going to push until I know that I can get what I deserve. And I think that's key, is like just knowing where you sit and knowing what your capabilities are and not trying to push for more than what you actually are ready for, to a certain extent. So no, I think there are people who are fine with just like, look, this is my job. I show up every day. I'll get pushed up eventually. For me personally, that's not how I operate. So that's not what I did.
So what was the even at your job there, I spoke about just being, the lack of diversity at that time that I experienced, right? And kind of what drove me to like some of the stuff that I've done now was the fact that I couldn't get in. I'm sure there lacked a lot of diversity there. I'm assuming that at that first agency that it wasn't as diverse as it should have been.
Actually, I will say my first agency was relatively diverse. And obviously, this is like, I will say this based off of like diverse comparative to other agencies, not
Got it.
like,
Okay.
not the national average, not like what should be based off of percentage wise, but like my first team there was a Black person, a Latino person, and an Asian person on my first team of like 5 people. So like we were technically diverse, right? Like, and we always joke that we have a little bit of everything. I think my first agency was was an anomaly, because as I moved to other agencies, it just became less and less and less. It just depends on where you work. Overall, though, advertising for sure has a diversity issue. Full stop.
Okay. So you grew, you went to the next level after a year and a half. You
I
asked.
gorillaed my way there.
Yeah. So you figured it out. So again, I know you've climbed the ladder a little bit. So as you started to climb again, did that happen as you changed agencies, or did you continue to climb to the next step at that same agency?
So the secret, to be honest, with an agency, if you want a promotion or you want more money, is to go someplace else. And it is kind of, I will say it's well known in the industry, but like kept under wraps. Most people don't Majority of people don't stay at their same agency. They move solely for more money or a title change. I had an interesting situation in my first agency where I did get promoted, but it was facilitated by other things outside of my control. It was like, okay, we need you, and we know that you were like teetering on leaving, so we're gonna give you this promotion, but like you probably wouldn't have gotten it if these other things hadn't happened. And I'm very well aware of that. And that's cool too, right? Because in my mind I was like, I could go someplace else and get this promotion. I just really liked the agency that I was working at. But I think it's well known within kind of the agency sphere that like if you want to get promoted or you want more money, you gotta hop to the next thing. And after I kind of spent my time in my first agency, I was there 2.5 years. It was time for me to hop to the next thing. And with that came more money and a promotion.
So as you started to get into these higher level positions, senior account, manager and going up the ladder, what was some of the issues and some of the things that you started to face as you started to climb the ladder um, you know, being a minority, right? Being someone you probably don't see as much, especially in your position.
Right. I think actually the higher I got, the less it became about race. To be honest, I think that you start to become tokenized and you start to become like what we call it the golden child, right? There's only one of you, so you must be special. So I found it actually easier to kind of navigate and advocate for myself the higher I got because you're already validated by the fact that you've done all these other things, right? Like it's like someone put somehow you got here, so you must have something special, right? So, and I won't say again, that's my case. For me personally, I found it easier for me to have a voice and I found it easier for me to speak up. And also I think it just comes with confidence, right? Like you get to a point where it's like, I'm not begging for a seat at the table anymore. Like I'm at the table. And I know what I bring to the table and that comes with time. I think my first agency, there are things that I would not say because I was scared and I was like, just happy to be there. And then you get older and you're like, actually, like I bring a lot to this table. So therefore I should have a voice because I bring a lot to the table. So I think it got a little bit easier for me. I got more confident, and that allowed me to navigate and to move in ways I never would have at 24, for sure.
Okay, so with that being said, I mean that's interesting, and I'm happy you said that because a lot of people that I've spoken to in the past, they say as they started to rise the ranks, it became a little bit more difficult. They were either questioned more or they were looked at not necessarily as the golden child, but more so as like, hey, we're filling a spot, for someone that looks like you, so to speak, right?
Right.
So it
I actually don't. I mean, I tapped out at agency life at an account soup level. I think had I reached like account director, I think that those things would have come into play more. But I kind of tapped out at like middle management. So I just moving from like entry level to like the next thing, and I guess the next thing after that, I didn't get to the point where I was like felt like I was filling a seat. To be honest.
got it. Okay, so you did the agency thing for a couple years. You climbed the ranks to as far as you wanted to go, at least, and then you decided, man, this isn't for me anymore, right? So tell me about that last week and I know you freelanced for a little bit, but that last week at your final stop of full-time employment, what was that like, and what made you say, you know what, like this is it? Like what gave you that push?
Yeah, so I guess just for the audience, like you know my story, but for the audience, like I was ultimately laid off. But the irony is that a few months prior, had kind of gotten to a space where I no longer wanted to be doing what I was doing anymore. And I think it just got hard. It got hard, and I guess to the point you just made, I felt like I was busting my ass every single day and had to be. I think when you are a person of color and there's only one of you or two of you, you feel like you have to be everything to everybody all the time. And I felt like I was just exhausted. I was exhausted of being like on my game 100% all of the time. I got into a car accident on the way to my client's office. And instead of going to the hospital, I got out that car and I went to my meeting and got home that night, went to bed, woke up the next day and didn't feel well, went to the doctors and they're like, you have a concussion. I was out of work for 2 weeks. Fine. But that really showed me how little time and space I was taking for myself and giving so much to a company that ultimately, like, at the first turn, when it was time to point fingers at someone, they were pointing all the fingers at me. And I was just like, how can you not say that I'm not dedicated to being here when I literally put my health on the line to come here? So, I mean, there was a bunch of things that kind of transpired, but ultimately kind of one day I was at work, my manager said something to me that was off base and not called for. And I went to lunch, a long lunch, And I grabbed my friend and we went to lunch, and I kind of was just like, you know what, I'm done with this. And it wasn't just like, it was just as simple as like, I'm done with this, right? Like it wasn't anything long or drawn out. It was a Friday and I was like, you know what? I think I'm done with this. That's it. Like I've done well. Like I have broken far past what I ever thought I would. I'm kind of done with this. And then I called you the next day. I called you because you were the only person I knew at that point who had exited like kind of a full-time capacity and was doing it long term. And you were like, what is your date? When are you leaving? And I was like, I don't know, June 15th feels good to me. For whatever reason, I was like, June 15th, and this was maybe April-ish at this point. I was like, June 15th sounds good to me, for whatever reason. So that Monday, this was just like a Saturday I spoke to you. That Monday, I took off and I'm home chilling. I solved the problem, right? Like I'm quitting. That's what I'm doing. I'm quitting. I'm gonna get all my doctor's appointments in a row. Like I am quitting and I'm gonna go do whatever. So I get a call from my boss being like, hey, I know you're off today, but like, can you join this meeting at 5? It's like really important. And I'm like, yeah, sure. So I see the meeting, like my whole team is on it, which is really abnormal. So come to find out, we lost my largest client. And I knew that at that point I would get laid off. It was just a matter of when. So this is like, I want to say maybe mid-April. So I'm kind of still showing up to work every day with very little to do because my client's going away. I'm just like tying up loose ends. And I know it's coming. Like my company had multiple layoffs up until that point. I know it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. Nothing's happening. I'm like, where is this layoff? Because I know what's coming. And then finally, I get a call from HR. I'm like, can you meet me? You know, the standard, can you meet me in the office? Like, shut the door. This is not going to be a good conversation situation. And this was May 15th. And she was like, hey, like, you know, we've had a string of losses, and unfortunately, we have to lay you off. But we want to give you time to, like, you know, get your affairs in order. So we're going to give you a month, and your last day will be June 15th, which was the exact same day that I was going to leave anyway. So that's kind of my story. So my departure was actually very long for for my last job. It was approximately like 2 months. And I can't say it made the departure easier. It still hurts the ego when you get laid off for whether it's your fault, someone else's fault, a mixture of both. Like it still is like shitty when people are just like, we don't need you anymore. So that's my layoff story.
Man, you know, it's funny you mentioned that. I remember that conversation now, that you when you did call me, and I said, what's your date? And you know, there's power in putting, you know, a date on paper or in your head and saying this is what I'm going to do, because if not, you'll find a ton of
All
excuses,
excuses not to.
right? Not to. So now that you said that, I was like, yo, I do remember that conversation. It's crazy, and you know, you don't realize how, you know, like literally the power of the word. Like you gave that date, and that's the date that it happened to happen. Yeah, whatever. So, and I think that's really, I think it's an interesting story, but it's good because it really started to prepare you for the afterlife of corporate America thus far, right? And you know, you
I
got
think
laid off.
in theory, I thought it would, but I was not. I don't think I was prepared for divorcing myself from like my work, right? Like I think a lot of, especially in our society, like a lot of your worth is attributed to like what you do, who you do it for, and how much you get paid to do it, right? So like all of a sudden not having that thing is kind of the crutch. Like you meeting people, they ask, what do you do? Right? That's one of the first questions that people ask. Like not having the answer to that was a struggle.
Well, yeah, no, absolutely. I think that you know, when you experience change, when you experience something different, when you have the unknown, there's fear behind that. So I get that, you know, but it's more so because of your experiences, because of what you went through, you know, as you're navigating the space of entrepreneurship and doing your own thing, you start to see, well, I wouldn't say you, I started to see some parallels to, you know, figuring out and navigating and doing things on my own, based on like experiences, whether good or bad, with, you know, what I did in the past.
Right.
And that was the preparation for me to say, yo, I got this. If I'm able to do this for you, then, you know, I need to figure out some tweaks, but I can do this for me also. Right.
I don't think I had the level of confidence. I'm not even gonna hold you. I had no real like plan, to be honest.
At that time.
At that
When
time, no.
oh yeah.
I like distinctly remember, well, not even distinctly remember, this was 2 years or 2.5 years ago, so not a long time, but I like went on vacation with my friend like the next day. Like literally, I was like, all right, my job's over on a Wednesday. On Thursday morning, we're flying to Miami. And I like signed up for this class that was full time just to kind of like, I was interested in it, but it was also just to give me something to do. And I didn't know what I was doing for like 6 months. I'm not even gonna hold you. I was kind of just like enjoying not working or being accountable to people for a check in exchange for a check. So I didn't have that experience that you had, but like, to each his own.
Yeah, no, I think so. When I left my job at first, again, I mean, I had about the same amount of time. It was probably a little bit more than 6 months. I left in October. It was either October or November, and I didn't start my own thing till like May or June. But I struggle with like the unknown as well, right? Like I struggled with figure like I didn't leave this job and had have things lined up. It takes time, obviously. It's a different experience. So you have to build on that. But once I got going, it prepared like then I was like, okay, I can get this going. So, I didn't expect you to, hey, June 15th is the day, and boom, June
And
16th, I'm
I
on
got
it.
a new company the next day, June
Yeah.
16th, we got a new company.
Exactly. It definitely takes time to build. So, but more so I meant, yeah, you got to go through that period, that experience, the experience of, like you said, self-worth. I think that's extremely, extremely important, something valuable that you mentioned, because a lot of people do ask, hey, what is it that you do? And for a while you start to struggle to figure out, what do I say that's intriguing enough so people don't think I am
A bum, right?
exactly
Right.
right. So, like, and it's a sense and a space of validation. So I definitely got that. But as you start to navigate through that and figure that out, you then begin to build your identity to, ultimately what it's meant to become, right? And you were able to use that time. I know you did a lot of traveling. You went to Bali for like 2 months, or one
Yeah,
month stint.
I definitely had like a whole like eat, pray, love moment. For sure. I was like, look, I don't know what's going on, but I know I want to go to Bali, and I just want people to leave me alone, right? I was really in a way where I was like, look, I just want everyone to leave me the hell alone and let me just like live my life. And I will say, just as someone who kind of did the thing, like went to high school, went to college, got a job, da 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 da. Like I think that sometimes we don't leave enough space for us to just grow as people, outside the confines of like what society says that we should be doing. So that, I mean, mine came a little bit late, came at 28, but for me it was like, okay, this is my time to kind of like be lost, and I was totally fine with that. Like I think from the outside looking in, a lot of people thought I was just like out here getting it right. Like I'm out here just living life, but really it was like a law. It was actually like a very lost period for me. So I was just trying to figure out who I want, what the next iteration of myself looked like. And sometimes you can't figure that out when you're going to the job every day and you're coming home and you're doing it again, and there's just no time for you to have like personal growth.
All right, so you leave this job now. You're lost, right? So, which again is I believe a very normal thing, right? When you're so used to doing something a certain way for so
Right.
long, it's just a different space. It's the space of the unknown. So you travel, you try to find things to fill your time. When do you get back into the mode of, all right, now it's time to get back into the groove and do what I love doing and do what I'm good at, on my own.
Yeah, so I get back from Bali, and I'm like, okay, like you need to like figure out what your life looks like. Like you've been out here like riding around and getting it for like 5 months. Like you need to do something. So I came back and really I just started having conversations, right? Like nothing crazy, just like you need marketing help. And marketing at that point could have been anything, right? Like there was no like you need social media help, you need brand help, you need design, whatever you need, sis, I got you, right? Like I will figure out a way to do it. And I had like two small clients, not bringing anything crazy, but like they were mine. And I think that sometimes we discount the small wins, and like literally going from like a six-figure job to like I got like this little small win and I'm happy with it. And I think that was an ego check for me, just being like, yeah, like you're not that girl anymore. Like you need to kind of take what you can get. So I had like two small clients that I was running with, not making a ton of money or whatever. and a friend of a friend had reached out to me. Her agency was looking for someone to come in and be an account supervisor, which is what I was doing when I left my full-time job. And I was like, I don't really want to do that because that's not what I'm trying to do, but like I kind of need the coin. So I was like, yes, but like I only want to work 3 days a week. And I was like, there's no way they're going to say yes to this. Like being an account manager is kind of a full-time job. It's not like I only work 2 days a week, so don't contact me the other days. And they said yes. I was like, I only want to do this for 6 months. They wanted someone for 6 months at least. And I was like, cool, I can do that, but I only want to do 3 days a week. And they went for it. And that 6 month period really just gave me it gave me money, right? Like it gave me enough money to be okay and not to worry about it. But two, it gave me enough time to like learn myself, understand what it means to freelance, to get used to getting paid monthly versus getting paid every 2 weeks, to like hone my craft a little bit more, to understand what I'm bringing to the table. So I'm not just going in and be like, hey, I can do all the things for you. Like knowing who I am and what my pitch is, like that 6 months really was a buffer for me to kind of just figure it out while doing something that I knew that I could do because I did it before. So I always say that 6 months, like, thank you, girl. That 6 months helped me out. So yeah, that was kind of like an interim period for me to just like kind of play in both worlds and see what happens, right? Like I was still very much on the fence of being like, I could always go back to agency life until probably about maybe a year ago. A year ago was probably when I was like, okay, cool. Like you need to make a decision to like do this for real, or like go back. And once I kind of made that decision to do it for real, that's when things really started to like pick up, and that's when traction started to happen. I
Yeah.
also went on vacation again, but
you know, it's funny. I mean, and you know, Mark, and one of the things that he said that I'll always remember, I interviewed him in, was it 2018, 2017, a month before he left his job. And obviously, he does photography. And one of the things he said to me was, when I started taking myself seriously is when others started taking me seriously. Right. And that's, he probably doesn't even remember that quote, but that is one of like, the things that really stood out because, you said it took, until about a year ago, you were still kind of dipping your toe, not 100% sure, being undecided, which again is definitely normal in the space, right? To where, sometimes I even do it. I look at different ventures, I look at different opportunities, like, hey, maybe I should do this, right? And not go all
right.
in. So you decided, a year ago, you decided, hey, you know what, this is what I'm doing. I'm all in. Agency life can kick rocks, at least for now.
Listen. That's never. You never say never. You never know.
Yeah, that's what I said, at least for now, right? I said at least for now. um, and so then you start to obtain clients, to obtain clientele as a, again, still playing on as a woman, as a Black woman, as you're starting to obtain clients, as you're starting to enter meetings, as you're starting to talk to the people who make purchase decisions. What was your confidence in a place, in a space where you felt good going in? Like, what did you do to kind of say, hey, I'm that woman,
Right.
I can do this job in a space that's predominantly dominated by white males, right? Like that's just the reality.
Yeah, I think it's funny because like once I was free from like the confines of agency, my confidence in my abilities really skyrocketed. I don't have, and we've had this conversation. If I get in front of someone, I'm most likely going to close the work. I don't know what the change is. I think that for me, it just when you work on your own, you are allowed to show up fully as yourself. And in the agency life, there was definitely like, well, just like make sure the clients feel good, like, right? Like say what you want, but like make sure the clients feel good. And a part of doing that all the time is that you start to stifle yourself. At least for me, right? Like, especially as a Black person, like I knew that there were certain things that I could not bring to a boardroom of a Fortune 500, right? You just can't leave that shit at the door. When you are working with small companies, and to be clear, and for the audience, like all of my clients are small businesses. So I typically talk directly to the founders, right? Like there's no middleman. There is no like middle management that's vetting me. It's like I'm talking to the founders, like, look, this is what I bring to the table. This is how much it costs. This is what it'll do for you. Are you with it or not? Right? Like, and that's kind of not that harsh, but that's kind of the energy. It's like, look, either you with it or you ain't. And if you're not, that's fine, right? And that's kind of the attitude that I've taken with me. And it's maybe it's helpful, maybe it's not. But for me, I would say that I don't struggle with the confidence because I know that I can do the job.
Uh, so that sounds great, right? I think there's a point that may even be subconscious to you that you got to a place where you can say, "Hey, this is what I do." You know, you're with it. Like there's a space there that it went from, "Hey, you know, let me be." I guess getting your first client or your first couple clients to like where you are now, right? There's a gap there because I don't in any, and I want to make sure I give value to like the people, right? So anyone starting their business, there's a space where you go in and you know you're trying to get your first client. Maybe you know you do it for a lower price, or you're stuttering a little bit as you know whatever that is, right? There's that gap there. So I'm trying to have people like how did you fill in that gap, so to speak?
I think once I got to a place where I understood what it was I was offering, because when I first started, I didn't understand I was offering. I was offering general marketing help, right? Like without any real rigor around it, because I was just trying to be a catch-all for everything. I think I got to the space by honing in on what I'm good at, and not just honing in on what I'm good at from like on paper, right? It's like what do I want to be doing? What am I passionate about? Once I honed in on those things, it's like, look, I'm good at it, but also like I genuinely love helping brands get to critical mass. Like that is my thing. Like I lose sleep over it at night, and I think that's the thing. That was the tick that I was always missing. Because if when you go in, I feel like authentically you can't lose. And either, I mean, you might lose clients, but ultimately like maybe they're not good clients anyway. Or I think I took losses along the way where like I met with someone, they wanted to hire me. I wasn't like super jazzed about it, or something about them I just like didn't like or didn't trust. And I did it anyway because I chased the money, and it wound up being more of a pain in the ass later because I just didn't follow my gut. So I think like following your gut, knowing who you are and what you do and what you bring to the table are imperative, but that takes time for you to kind of just figure out what that space is. For me, at least, I went in trying to be everything for everybody instead of trying to be who I'm best for the people I'm best for. And it takes time for you to kind of shift that mindset.
Is there someone that you look to or look at that's like you, that you're like, yo, they're doing a hell of a job, and you've kind of molded yourself, not necessarily to be like them, but at least to aspire to accomplish some of the things they've done, or you know, their work ethic. Like, who is that person for you?
I don't think it's one person. I think it's a multitude of many people. And I've never had formal mentors. And that is something I regret. To y'all listening who are young or in college or just starting out, get a mentor. They're invaluable. I've kind of always operated independently, and just like kind of gather people along the way. That person for me is not one singular person. I take what I think works for me from one person and leave everything else, right? Like, oh, I like their hustle. Cool. I'll take that. I like their design, like aesthetic. I'll take that from them. Like, I like their POV. I'll take that from them. But for me, it's never been one person. It's kind of been like this, like conglomerate of like multiple pieces of multiple people I've met along the way.
Okay. So you're freelancing now, you're acquiring clients, you have you know exactly what you're offering. People are joining, or people are, you know, you're starting to acquire a good amount of clients, even to a point where I remember us having a conversation where you had too much work, you
Yep.
felt like, right? And you felt a little overwhelmed. Kind of speak to me about that realization, kind of what you did or what you didn't do, how you were able to kind of I guess adjust and get to a place of sanity,
Right.
right?
Yeah, I mean, I think I started to call down. Well, I think a couple things. One, COVID happened. That did that for me. So that was great, right? Like COVID was like, okay, cool. Like actually, all the shit you don't want to be doing is going to fall off your plate anyway. But I started to just be more picky. And I literally, it's like, okay, if I meet with someone, like it has to be one of three things. Like either I really like them, the people that I'm working with, I really like the product, or they're paying a lot of money, right? Like it has to be, and it got to a point where it was like one of those things had to be in place. Then it got to a point where it's like, actually, I need two of these things, right? I need to either really like them or they got a lot of money, or I really like them or I really like the product. Like it has to be, I had to start putting parameters around like clients because I got to a place where I was getting a ton of referrals, which is fantastic, right? Like I think when someone refers you to someone else, like that is the ultimate vote of confidence with like being like, this person, I believe in this person so much that I am giving other people your name. Which is great. Like referrals are great, but it got to a point where I was like, I can't actually even navigate these. Like I can't navigate all these referrals and like, or it was just work that like I didn't want to do because I started out in a place where I was like, I can do everything. I'm amazing. And people were like, oh my God, I think you are too. And then they would just like throw me stuff that wasn't even in my wheelhouse, really. So I just started to have to set parameters where I'm just like, not everything's about the money for me. I have clients that aren't the highest paying, but I genuinely enjoy working with them and I enjoy their product. So I work with them at a lesser rate that I could than what I could actually get because that's just where they are as a company. So for me, you have to start setting parameters. Like you have to start setting parameters. Otherwise, everyone will tug at you and they will suck you dry if you let them.
So very true. So over the last, I mean, it's been a while, but I guess really over the last 90 days, you said, hey, I am getting bigger than my name, right? I didn't want to be known, like I wanted to go in and be this company. So I'm not fully, everyone's not fully dependent on me and you can start to scale, right? Like as you, there's only so much you can do. So kind of talk to me about that place and the company you have now or that you founded. Kind of talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, so exactly what you said, right? Like I have these conversations where there's only one of me. And the issue, I guess, I won't call it an issue, but the snag is that when I do go and have these conversations, to our earlier point, I'm selling myself, right? Like people are buying into me. And I can't clone myself. So I have to kind of find a way to one scale, but also to like, this is a passion project for me. And as much as I like wanted to break into agency, my like little like reach goal in the back of my mind I never thought I would get to is to have my own agency in whatever capacity that is. I don't like the word agency because I'm ex-agency, but essentially like that's always been kind of in the back of my mind. I just never thought it was in reach. So for me, 613 is the name of my company. I won't call it an agency. Really the goal is for me to kind of branch out into more of the creative space. I'm not a creative, but I enjoy creative things and creative work. So what we do is we create brand identities and brand strategy for small brands who are just getting off the ground. So everything from naming conventions to Viz IDs to logos to whatever, that's what we do. So it allows me to kind of take a step back where I say, okay, like my brain doesn't need to be in this, right? It's like I still do the same, like selling into the client. I work with them directly and then outsource the work to someone else, to a designer. And my eyes are the ones that kind of say yes, no, maybe so. And ultimately I manage that process, but it doesn't require me to be like stuck in the day to day. While I can still tend to my other clients and give them kind of my brain trust. I'm still trying to figure out how I like myself. So let me know if you find for that.
No, I think I think that's absolutely
Only
amazing.
one me.
I think that and sometimes we don't take the opportunity to really reflect, right? Like just think about like where you were 10 years ago, right? As this, you know, someone
Right.
who went against the grain at NYU and you know just that process to where you are that's now 613. And by the way, just for the people, how did you come up with 613?
So as mentioned, my last day at my job was my full-time job was supposed to be June 15th. I decided to leave 2 days early to go to Miami. So my last day at my last day at a full-time job was June 13th, which is why the company is called 613. Little cutesy backstory, but yeah, it felt right to me in my spirit.
Hey, that's what's important, man. But yeah, no, like so, just just thinking about that journey, it's important for people, and speaking to you, just to reflect on that journey. A lot of times things happen so quickly, um, and you don't really know, or you don't really remember everything that you've actually been through, or have overcome to get to where you are. So I think that's really crucial. And I mean, it's a practice that even I'm trying to get to, and journaling and doing these things kind of remind me, like, man, I've been through some of this stuff, right?
Yeah. No, it's wild. Like even just like walking through, and obviously there are many more things that have happened over the past 10 years than what we just talked about, but even just like walking through that with you, like it's insane. I think that it is easy to get lost in the day-to-day shuffle. To your point, it's easy to get lost in the day-to-day hustle. But like when you look back, and it's like, if someone would have told me this even 10 years ago, I would have been like, even in a space where like I was very much poised to do this and given the tools, I would have been like, you're batshit crazy, right? Like I don't think that I don't see that for myself. But it's funny because there's this Instagram trend that's going on right now. It's how it started, how it's going, or whatever.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
the CMO of Netflix, Bazama St. John, had posted her first day at an agency was 20 years ago. Now she's CMO at Netflix, and she did this whole live about like basically she just wanted someone to give her a chance, right? And I think that's where we all sit is like you just need, if you are the correct person, with if you are the correct person with the ability to kind of take something and run, you just need a chance. And that someone gave me a chance, and maybe I like grilled my way to that chance, but like there are people along the way who believed in me, who really helped propel me to where I am today. And a lot of them are unsung heroes, right? Like they're people that were just, just saw this little brown girl, was like, look, I believe in you. Like you're smart. I'll give you a chance. And that's what I personally needed. So I think most people just need an opportunity.
What's is there anything on the radar for 613, or anything that you plan on doing? Are do you have enough clients? Are you just scaling down? What's the what does the future look like? And not in a, and I
Like,
say that, and not in a very cliche, like, hey, what's your 5-year goal? But
right.
really, you just, you decided, hey, I want to start this company up because I'm becoming bigger than me, and I have, this vision. So what does that look like for you?
It looks like right now it looks like settling in. It is scary. I won't hold anybody, like it is scary to go out on your own. It was scary becoming a freelancer. Now it's scary to put a real thing around it and make it real, make it real. So right now I'm settling in. I'm booked. So 613 runs on what we call seasons. So season one is booked. Thankfully, was booked before it existed. So that I'm grateful for that. So I'm booking season two. I want to do a merch play. It really, I don't know. I think the bound, there are really no bounds for it because I'm doing what I want to do with it. It's really a passion project for me. The money from freelancing will always be there, God willing. 613 for me is kind of just like playing with house money, right? Like, let's just see what this becomes. Grand scheme, biggest dreams is that it becomes kind of a branding company, where we do merch, we do events, we do maybe a physical location post COVID. But right now it is real small and it's my little child, and I'm just one day at a time.
It seems like you're living out your your dream, right? Like there's a light feeling around, and not your dream like hated, but like having your own baby and doing what, like, it seems like you feel really light, like this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and I will say that also, like, I don't waste time not doing the thing that you know you've been called to do. Because I spent a lot of time like justifying, like, oh well, let me get this money right now, and then I'll worry about doing what I want to do later, right? And there's some merit to that. If you got bills to pay, by all means, like, don't go homeless. But I think that everyone has a pool, right? Like, there's that thing that you know that you want to be doing. It's that thing that you've been called to do, and we find all of the reasons not to do them. I started freelancing when I had a full-time job, and I was like, this is cute, but like, I'm gonna still show up to my full-time job every day knowing damn well that's not what I wanted to be doing, because I didn't see that for myself. So once you see it for yourself, I think that's golden, and you just follow the pool. until you get to where you are going. Not saying that it's easy either. I'm just saying follow the rule.
No, absolutely. So
Clear.
last question, and by the way, man, this has been a phenomenal interview. But last question I want to, and it's a little sidetrack. So you've been, I don't know if you have been recently, but at least during COVID, you were running,
Yeah.
right? You were running. I remember our first conversation where you was doing like a mile or so, maybe a little less, and I was like, hey, I saw the time. I was like, this is pretty good. You need to start, upping it a little bit. And I remember the thing you told me, and this isn't verbatim paraphrasing, but you said something like, oh yeah, I don't do more than a mile, or I can't do more than a mile, or whatever it was. And now you're doing like 2.5, 3, whatever it is. uh what's that been like? How you got into running, and or you were a runner, but you're not now, you're running, and you're like, what's
Yeah.
that like?
So I mean, it just was a COVID activity. Like I won't even go as far as like giving it the space. Like I started running because the gyms were closed, and I didn't want to gain 50 pounds. Right. Like literally, like very practical. Like I'd never run more than a mile before because at the gym that was my warm ups. I'd get on the treadmill, run a mile. That's it. Um, yeah, I won't give too much thought to it. I think that I treat running the same way I treat everything else. You show up and you do it every day. Like you show up and you do it. Well, not every day or whatever your cadence is. You show up and you do it. It will change for you. Like I think people give up too soon. Like, and that's kind of a testament to my story. Is like I just showed up and did the thing every day until it turned into whatever I wanted it to be. And then when it turned into what I wanted it to be, then I moved the goalpost again and said, okay, now what do you want it to be now, right? So yeah, I mean, running for me, the gyms are open again, so sis is back on the treadmills.
I mean,
That's okay. Sometimes you do the thing, you're like, you know what? Like I thought that's what I wanted, but it wasn't.
yeah, no, yeah. I mean, your mile splits are great. They're damn near faster than mine now. So you've been killing the game.
It's getting cold out. I'm back indoors. So yeah, but I think I treated that the same way I treat everything, and not to like bring this back to like a like full circle like moment, but if you show up every day and do the thing, like something has to change. I think people give up too soon.
No, absolutely. I'm happy your gym's open. Mine's actually just closed yesterday.
Again?
Yep, yep. It reclosed. Brooklyn hot zone, I guess, but whatever.
Yeah, you're in Brooklyn. I'm sorry.
But man, it's been an absolute pleasure, man. I really do appreciate you taking the time to be on the podcast, man. This was phenomenal conversation, and we got so much value from it. So I do thank you, for that.
Of course, like definitely. I mean, this was helpful for me. This is like a little therapy session, right? Like just I got to talk about myself for an hour, so that was great. But no, I mean, I guess if there's any parting words for me, it's just keep going. That's my story. Keep going. Follow the thing that feels right to you, even if it goes completely against what everyone says that you should be doing.
Absolutely. So, for those that are listening, and I'll post this video. I haven't done a actual podcast video in a while, so I will post a video. But for those who are listening, if someone wants to connect, how do people find you? What's the best way? If anyone wants marketing, whatever that looks like how do people find you?
Sure. So you can reach me at my company page at thisis613.com. 6, the number 13 spelled out. You can reach me on Instagram at the same handle, thisis613. You can reach me via email at s@thisis613.com. And for those of you who want my personal information, I'm Shanique Bundy on Instagram and everything else on the internet. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This again, this has always been a pleasure. I've done a lot of interviews in the past, and this has definitely been one of my most exciting and fun interviews that I've done. So I appreciate it, as per usual, as I end every podcast within the last 2 months or so, because I've been doing this for so long. I appreciate everyone tuning in every single week, and as usual, peace and love.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Death.